Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, back with the Ball Lightning Sorc. Now, while lots of Sorcs got kind of nerfed in this season, the Ball Lightning Sorc actually received several buffs, which I think take it from about an A-class build all the way up to the tippity top. And very shortly here, we're going to be getting even more buffs, which may be taking it all the way up to S tier and beyond. And it's just an absolutely incredible build that's very, very fun to play, has short cooldowns, don't really have to worry about mana management all that much, and is just a blast to play. Personally, I'm a big fan of that Blade Vortex, just chew through enemies style playstyle, and this build really delivers. Now in this video, we're going to go through kind of what's changed from preseason to now, but if you want all of the details, you can check the description below. We have a written guide on the MobileX website, which is always the most up-to-date spot to get all the information for the build. Now, starting off, most importantly, the key legendary affix, Gravitational, is now available on the Codex, as long as you complete the 4th season journey, which is easily done by the time you finish up like World 1 or 2, all the way going up to like level 50 and going into World Tier 3. And this aspect is even more getting a buff here very shortly. So right now it reads Ball Lightning orbits around you, but its damage is decreased by a percentage. So this is 20 to 10%, which means that yes, it's a less damage multiplier. It's like a big negative here. They're changing this to be 10 to 25% more damage. So that's like 35% more damage if you have the best rolls, which makes this a really big deal. We're getting even more damage. And I'm already clearing easily plus 10 or 12 nightmare dungeons without any problems. So this is going to take the build all the way into supersonic speeds and just be really ridiculous. Next up for the season, there are hearts. And we're going to be using the Heart of the Barber as our wrathful heart. And this basically turns all of your enemies into little bombs or like little Minecraft creepers. You damage them and they store up all this damage, and after the time expires or they would have died from the stored damage, they will just explode, doing damage to all of their friends near them. Not to you, but just all the enemies around them, and it is very, very powerful. This also lets you keep on damage numbers, because sometimes this build can hit so quickly and so fast that leaving damage numbers on is kind of blinding. And so with this, you can actually leave them on, kind of see the damage you're doing. But this heart is absolutely nuts for clearing out packs. We're going to be sucking lots of enemies on top of us with the unique body armor, which I don't actually have right now. But once you do have that, it sucks all the enemies on top of you and they just all explode, murdering everything. And it is a really good time. One thing to note is this also is a single target damage increase, because it increases the damage that you do over time. So this is just a very, very, very powerful heart, and is definitely something that you want to get. The next heart that we're using is the Heart of Talrasha. So what this does is it makes it so that you do increase damage. This is all damage for each different type of damage that you do. And so we're going to be doing 3 different types of damage baseline. So we have lightning damage, obviously. We're doing fire damage with our enchantment of Firebolt. And then we're going to be doing cold damage with Ice Blades, which is a little bit of a different change to the build. But this gives us 3 damage types, which ends up being, for this, about 36% more all damage, which is in its own separate bucket, and it's multiplied by Glass Cannon. But wait, there's more, because the Barber, which we're also using, also does its own type of damage. I believe it might be dark damage. I haven't really tested this per se, but this gives you an additional stack as well. So instead of just getting 36%, we're getting 48%, which is quite a bit of damage. And this thing keeps itself up as long as you're doing any type of damage. So even the small burn that you have going from the Firebolt enchant will keep this active for you. So you don't really need to worry about the duration, just really worry about the damage percentage. Now, I see a lot of people talking about using Tempting Fate, which gives you more critical strike damage, but your non-critical strikes do less damage. And I kind of mathed it out on my spreadsheet, and these are about the same, except for this has a negative if you're not critting. If your mana is not very high, you're not going to be activating the Elementalist aspect. So there's times where this can actually hurt you a little bit more than this will help you. So I'd recommend using Talrashas for that reason. The last heart that I'm using right now is the Heart of Revenge. This makes it so you just take like 20% less damage, and anytime you activate one of your defensive skills, you do a small fire explosion, which is not really that big of a deal. But the less damage taken is very noticeable. You just feel tankier this season than you did before. You also notice if you haven't been playing this season that each of these hearts has an armor value on it. And this armor value can go up to like 320, I believe, at really high levels. You can see it like on the ring right below the upgrades. This is like 304 armor. And so we're tankier now than we were before with armor. Other hearts that people have talked about is the one that makes it so your core skills launch additional projectile. This does not work with Ball Lightning. Ball Lightning is not a core skill, so this won't help you out. We talked about Tempting Fate. And Spell Breaking, they're also changing so that whenever you take elemental damage, this will make you take less damage as well. So if you're really looking for like a defensive setup, you could replace Tau Rashas with this to have Revenge and Spell Breaking to really increase your defensive layers. But these are the hearts that I use right now. The Barber, I recommend as long of duration as possible on this one. Tau Rashas with as high of damage percentage as possible. And then Revenge with as high of percentage of suppressed damage as possible. Now for the skill tree, I already kind of mentioned some of the changes that we're going to be doing, but Elemental Dominance now works with Mastery skills. So we're going to be picking this up because we're very frequently going to be casting our Ball Lightning when our mana is above 50%. Also, they're going to be buffing Destructive Chain Lightning, so this will be causing Crackling Energy be forming every 30% chance on crit, which will be happening quite a bit. So this is even more buffs for the build. And I kind of took some points out of Elemental Attunement. Some people pointed out to me that this is not as good as I thought it was. I thought this reset all of your defensive skills, but it's just one of your defensive skills, which is not all that impactful. I also took points out of Conjuration Mastery, and instead of going for Lightning Spear, we're now going for Ice Blades. Ice Blades is pretty cool because it does frost damage so that we activate that for our Tau Rashas, but this also helps reduce the cooldowns of all of our other skills, which does kind of make up for the cooldown reduction nerf that basically every build got. Having Ice Blades in our build also makes it so that you're fighting tough bosses like Uber Lilith. They're able to keep vulnerable up more frequently. Last season when I was trying to kill Uber Lilith and we're getting to like phase 2, Ice Blades made a very noticeable difference in the uptime of vulnerability. So this is very good. So for the Paragon, there are a few changes thanks to some more buffs that Sorc received. And there's just been a little bit of like damage reduction increase all across the board. However, there's one big change, and that is the Destruction Glyph. Now, I should have leveled this up to 15 already, but I kind of forgot about it. But they changed this so this now affects all skills and not just core skills, which gives us a big damage boost because critical strike damage is a very good stat for us. And this also makes it so that enemies take more damage from us, which is another multiplier in our buckets. And critical strike damage is way better than what we were using before with the charged glyph, which was only giving us crackling energy damage, but a like 15% damage boost for picking up that crackling energy. So over here, we're going to get 12% more damage taken, and we are also getting critical strike damage, which more than makes up for the difference there. I'll be leveling this up all the way to level 21, and this might even actually be better depending on your stat breakdown in the like, exploit glyph spot or in the control glyph spot that we're using before, which are on Ceaseless Conduit and Burning Instinct, since these get the most dexterity of any board. Also, changing from the charge glyph to a dexterity glyph on the Frigid Fate board is kind of causing us to have a little bit of a weird looking pathing here. And I've kind of tinkered around with this a little bit so far, trying to find the best way to path through this particular board, because this corner down here is incredibly strong with lots of vulnerable damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. And I just think that right now this is probably the best setup. Besides all that, I am going to be including a recommendation for the paralyzing rare node in your just Paragon board in general. The big part about this is that this and the two nodes that are next to it help give you an additional plus 16 to maximum mana. And it's a little bit more difficult in this patch to get max mana. They reduce the amount that you can find on your hat. And I haven't even found a good one yet with good max mana, which kind of makes me realize like how difficult this could possibly be. Having more max mana makes it a lot easier for you to activate the elementalist aspect and just not have to worry about mana management as much. And so I think that this node is definitely worth picking up. Even if it doesn't seem like it's a big damage increase, having more max mana is a good thing. So the build is even stronger than ever before. You don't even need any specific unique to play this build. I'm just using a random legendary chest that has some defensive stats on it while I wait for it to drop level 84 and counting here. And once I change into that, I'll just be able to move this unwavering onto my pants. And I just have the protector aspect right now because I didn't really know what else to put in there. And I was expecting to get my body armor before this point, but it is what it is. Now, in terms of leveling, I leveled pretty much as this build. As soon as I could start casting Ball Lightning, I started casting Ball Lightnings, and it was pretty fun because I had the aspect from leveling another character to level 100. Now, the one thing I do recommend, though, is in these skills that you use instead of Arc Lash. I see a lot of people using Arc Lash early on. I instead was using Spark for the Flickering Spark. And this just gives you quite a bit of crackling energy. It doesn't really do a whole ton of damage, but just generating more crackling energy really helps get the build kind of moving. And so I was basically doing the entire build without the ultimate until about like the 40s or so. And then around that point, I was able to switch over to the full build and just started rolling. And you kind of just have to figure out like at what's that breakpoint for you to drop Spark and you can just blast all of the time. And it just felt pretty good. Having the key passive definitely lowers all the cooldowns of everything before you have the key passive to lower your cooldowns, overflow or energy. The ultimate definitely feels like it's on a pretty long timer and is not as impactful to your overall clearing. But I was able to just clear through strongholds and stuff with friends. And I was like outperforming 2 people clearing one side of a stronghold. And I was doing another side all by myself. I was going faster than 2 guys. This build is very strong in that regard. You can just zip around really, really fast teleport cooldowns, and just getting lots of crowd control, lots of explosions. Hopefully this build helps. If you want to see a more detailed video guide, check it out in the description below. Check out the written guide and come by the stream. See ya.